Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Faith and Philanthropy. I am happy today to have two phenomenal panelists and speakers here with me today. First off is Elder Darren Boykins, hailing from the great city of New Orleans, Louisiana. I have known Darren, who is a serial entrepreneur, a man of faith, a man who has served faithfully with Bishop Tommy Triplett, and now with Pastor Brandon Boutan in New Orleans. And so welcome, sir. Just say welcome to the people.
Hello, listening audience.
Awesome. And we also have joining us Elder LaTona Thomas. I again have known Elder Thomas for a number of years. Her and her husband continue to serve faithfully at Changing a Generation, Full Gospel Baptist Church, under the leadership of Bishop Paul S. Morton here in Atlanta, Georgia. Elder Thomas in herself is a phenomenal woman. She has done the homework, what it means to be financially free, and she helps others to be able to do that as well. She is a certified public accountant, which means she understands those numbers, and nobody can get past her with your little sly ways of doing things. So again, when we talk about faith and talking about finances and really talking about what our conversation tonight is going to be phenomenal. So welcome, Elder Thomas. Just say hello to the people.
Good evening.
All right. I was sharing before we got online today, incident that happened to me and my husband on Sunday. We went out for a casual pre-Father's Day meal, and we were sitting at the table, and my husband, as he does, happened to be on his phone while we were eating dinner. And he was checking the bank account, and we didn't worry about it covering anything. But he checked the bank account, and while we're sitting at dinner, believe it or not, he pulled up our account, and there was what I thought was $50 million. And he said, no, go back and look at those numbers again. I said, oh my God, literally, we have $50 billion sitting in our savings account.
Wow.
And we're both saying that. We're saying, wow. And I felt like it was so timely that God took that incident, that moment in time, and kind of just tapped me and said, Shepherd, I know on today, you plan to talk about, this whole thing about faith and philanthropy, and this statement and this notion about the harvest. And what I heard God say in that moment was, no, we didn't spend the money, is that if all of a sudden I drop this miracle in your lap, are you prepared for it? Right. What's your mentality for how to handle the harvest? And so for me, we're going to spend some time talking and delving into that today, understanding what the harvest is, really tapping into some things, because a lot of times, and we were talking about this earlier, is that within terms of ministry, we talk a lot about seed. Sow a seed, give a seed for this, give a seed for that, drop a seed in good ground. Y'all know all the church stuff that we do. And so seeds are important. And as we talked about this, seeds are very important, especially in the world of, giving and receiving. But we talk about this, that seeds are really like the birthplace. It's the birthplace of philanthropy. The manifestation of philanthropy happens in the harvest. It's when the harvest comes that we have an overflow and we're able to give philanthropically. Right. And large numbers. Yes. And so I brought both Elder Boykins on and Elder Thomas on to really kind of give us a basis for what the harvest is. So either one of you can jump right in and just talk a little bit about that.
Well, I'm glad that you're talking about the harvest. And I think that in order to start off, we first have to understand what the harvest is. And if we can get a real understanding of the harvest, then we can have a great conversation. Now, the harvest and the heart of God is one and the same. I'll repeat that. The harvest and the heart of God is one and the same. Now, how can I back that up scripturally? Well, we have to look at what's called the principle of first mention. So we have to find out, what did the word harvest mean in the original language back when it first was mentioned? And we'd have to go literally to Genesis 8:22. And to get an understanding, you have to go up a little bit before that. What happened is that God had just destroyed the world and Noah was on the ark, fast forwarding, and they came to dry land, and Noah built an altar to God and made a sacrifice. And the sacrifice was so pleasing to God that God spoke from his heart. This is the first time he spoke from his heart. Normally he said things, he thought things. But when Noah made that sacrifice for him, that seed, that moved God's heart. And God says, Noah, as long as the earth remains, there will be seed time and harvest. See, the harvest and God's heart is the same. When you begin to sow, you move God to move in your situation. And when God moves in your situation, then you're able to do things. And I yield.
And thank you, Elder Boykins. And let me say, from my perspective, the harvest is over and above that. There's no way that you can start to really live in the harvest if you don't have enough to. So if you have a brother and sister in need, can you assist them? It's difficult for you to assist them if you're struggling to pay your base and take care of your basic needs, because the Bible says that God will supply all of our needs, right? So if our needs aren't being met, is that on God? You just heard Boykins say that the harvest and God's heart is one and the same. So if our needs aren't being met, we're not living in the harvest. And if we're not living in the harvest, is it on God or is it on us?
And so, Dr. Thomas, you make a good point, and I'd love for you to delve a little bit further this for Boykins. When is enough enough? Is that something that, is there like a litmus test or a number? Is it personal? Is there like some goal setting that's out there somewhere in your worlds of finance and financial planning that says, hey, this is enough point? What does that look like to you?
Well, God is saying that he gives seed to the sower. All right. And while that you're sowing seed, he meets your needs. He provides bread, and then he multiplies the seed that's sown. And the reason why God does that, the reason why he continues to give you, is so that you cannot be self-centered. Your life has to be focused on helping people. We talk about our Redeemer live it, right? And we are made in God's image and likeness. So we're little redeemers, right? Our goal is to restore people. So I have a philosophy I live by. I said, whenever I hear something or I see something, I do something. So God provides me with enough resources. So if I'm sitting in the barbershop, one time I was getting my hair cut, and as the barber was cutting my hair, they were talking in the internet where the kids the night before, they went to a basketball game and they didn't have tennis shoes and they didn't have jerseys, and everybody was laughing at them. So I said, hold up, you mean to tell me that the kids in the gym were laughing at the other kids? He says, yeah. I said, well, listen, get me the shoe size of every kid that's on that team. Get me their jersey size. And we took them out and we bought the top tennis shoes they had and the best jerseys. And see, when they went back the next night, I said, they wasn't laughing no more. See, we're protectors of society as a whole. As Christians, our job is to get this access money and then allow the heart of God to use it to bless people. And that's what God wants us to do. And if the Christian community recognize the strength is being a redeemer, being a restorer, being a protector, then see, we have an obligation. We don't want our kids being put out of college. We have this access money to help people. And God will allow you to be in situations where you will hear things and see things. And then it's your responsibility to move on that situation.
Right. And I like that. In order to get to that place of harvest, because what he just described is actually harvest, living, yes, walking in the harvest. But yes, in order for you to get to that place of harvest, you yourself have to be financially secure.
Correct.
The reason Boykins was able to do that is because he was already in a position where he's operating in the overflow. We, yes, like to say that, but when are we going to move beyond the seed? Like he said, God gives seed to the sower. So we're continuously sowing, but when are you going to really sit back and receive the harvest of God? And are we squandering the harvest? Mm-hmm. Are you put in positions like that, but you can't meet that need because you didn't handle the 90%, right? You didn't handle the harvest properly.
Yes.
So God is opportunities, but because we're not properly prepared financially, then those people that he's sending across our paths for us to bless, we're not able to do that because we're not in position to do that. So from a personal perspective, I think it's important that we recognize that the stewardship, right? We teach stewardship in most ministries, even if you're not ministry, if you're not a Christian, most people understand and learn some level of stewardship. So, and that's properly managing what it is you have in your hands.
Yes.
So if you're not properly managing that, that's really the key to getting out. Really managing, having the integrity and the discipline that comes along with managing what you have. And if you properly manage that, I guarantee you the harvest is right there at your fingertips. You may be spending it on a dress, or spending it on some shoes or some suits or some things that you shouldn't, or you may just be eating it away or drinking it away or what have you. But I promise you, this is the season. And I think, but I believe we've been in that season. This whole pandemic was a time of us to restructure ourselves. And it's not too late. If you've not started that process, it's never too late with God. But because I do believe, as Boykins said, seed time is harvest. And I know we go to changing. So Bishop Morton has already said and declared over us that God will take time out of the equation. So, and because I'm a believer and I believe God, I believe he will take that time and he will redeem the time so we can walk in a harvest.
Correct. Yes.
And I want to talk about, someone bring something up. So in Numbers 13, there's a story of Joshua and Caleb, 12 spies. And I started thinking about this, and that God made them a promise saying, hey, I'm going to get ready to give you this land of flowing milk and honey. And so they're sent out, 12 spies are sent out to, purview the land.
Right.
And there's a harvest. There's these, huge grapes and this place of abundance. And yes, there are, quote, giants there, if you want to say that. And I thought about this and just really thinking about the mentality of what it takes to receive a harvest. Because at that point, there were 12 spies. But only Joshua and Caleb were able to receive and understand how to possess the harvest and what that looks like. Yeah. And the other 10 came back with the bad report.
Yes.
And so I really can you tap into that and just the mentality of how do we begin to receive the harvest? What does that look like in helping people to prepare themselves mentally for that?
Well, I think it's important that our listening audience understand that we're made in the image and likeness of God. And we're a powerful people. God has made us powerful, right? And he's designed us, as Bishop Darren Triple say, he designed us to feel powerful, think powerful, and be powerful by making powerful decisions. And a lot of times when we get the harvest, we are lacking in self-esteem, right? So we start trying to buy things to make us look good. We start to buy things that we start living in the past. Say, I never had a television set, so you go buy 100 television sets, right? I never had a pair of shoes, so you go buy 100 pair of shoes. So you have to realize that you are fearfully and wonderfully made. That is the first requirement. And then you got to have, you can have all the information you want. You can have the proper information, but if you don't have courage to move on it, you're never going to be successful. They were at the promised land. They saw the grapes. They saw two men carrying the grapes, right? But they still didn't have courage to go get the grapes. So God's going to give us, he's going to give us vision and provision, but we have to have courage to move on it. And a lot of times in the Black community, we have people that Black men, Black women, professional, went to Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Spelman, Morehouse, Grambling, Southern, all these great institutions, right? But here in Louisiana, we own 3% of the business. In New Orleans, 65% Black owned, 65% Black population. We own 1% of the business in the whole city. Now, we have all this information, but we're lacking the courage. God says, go, do not be afraid of their faces. He says, go low and I'm going to be with you. He has given us power to get wealth. And the reason why we have to be wealthy because we have work to do in the kingdom. And if you want to solve the problem of gentrification, then don't be afraid to be successful. God has our back.
Right. And I would say this to piggyback on what he said is I do believe with Joshua and Caleb, it requires work.
Yes.
Receiving the harvest requires work, right? The enemy is not going to just sit back and let us walk in harvest. So you got to go and take it and fight for it. So I would leave you, I would say this, there's 4 things I have on a sticky note on my computer at work. 4 things I pray for daily. And it's real simple: wisdom, guidance, courage, and strategy.
Yes.
4 things every single day: wisdom, guidance, courage, and strategy. And what's my daily prayer to God in everything that I do in my daily professional life, personal, spiritual, that's my prayer.
Yes. And also what's very, very important to understand, when the harvest comes in the book of Joshua, chapter 13 and verse 15, it talks about that when it was harvest time, the Jordan River would overflow, the banks would overflow. That meant the water would rise and all the animals and all the predators would get close to the people who was getting the harvest. In other words, when you start getting that money and you start being blessed, they're going to have more snakes into your life, right? You're going to have more predatory people. So you have to be, the Bible says you have to be shrewd as the serpent and harmless as a dove, right? You have to learn to have the power of no, because everybody's going to come to you with a story. And listen, your spending has to be intentional. Your giving, you can't be an emotional giver, right? Because if you're an emotional giver, you're in trouble, because they got some folks going to have some storage. You have to recognize that there's so many people are going to come to take your harvest, right? God says, listen, this was shook me. I said, God, how is it that you said that you will bless my family for 4 generations and I'm struggling to pay my light bill? I said, that don't add up. And I said, well, how does that work? He said, it's in the seed. He said, the seed that was sown by your grandmother, your grandfather, all the good they did, that seed is going to come up in a harvest for the next 4 generations. So we're never, listen, because there's so much seed out there and the harvest is going to come. We need to walk in the favor of God and the power and move, because as we go, he's going to give us the vision and ideas. Don't be afraid. You can't fail, because goodness and mercy follow us, right? So jump off into that business, right? Not just a job or a career, but get this mentality out your mind that I'm saving for retirement. When you're 20 and you're in your 30s, it's not time to think about retirement. It's time to take risks. Open the business. Go for it, because you have years to recover. So that's what's important. When you get this harvest, don't allow the devil and his people to come. The Bible says, look, don't be tossed by every winning doctrine. Every time somebody come up with a scheme, you at the seminar. They say, we're going to teach you how to get rich. Now, why they ain't rich? Seem like every family should be rich. Look at something. My cousin called me for money. Why you ain't making rich?
So the one thing I would say, and I'll definitely tie into this, is so in my world of philanthropy, there's a report that comes out every year. So it is just getting ready to hit the press. And it's called the Giving USA Report. Mm-hmm. And so the world of philanthropy and people in my profession, that's what we look to understand how the money is flowing. And so I got a preview of what's up and coming. And so last year, givers gave $471.4 billion away.
Praise God.
$471.4 billion was given away last year. And of that, to religious organizations, I'm looking for that, was 131 million. And so I always say this in my world, everybody ain't broke. Because if not, I wouldn't be able to ask folk for money and corporations for money and foundations for money and be able to get the money I do to support the organizations that I work with. So $131 million of that 471 billion went to religious organizations. And I will say with this, so when this report comes out, it'll give some good news and it'll say, yes, giving to religious organizations went up by 1.3% this year. was not in the report. And this is really why we started this whole faith and philanthropy talking point, and really trying to make sure we inform both the lay people and the pastors, the pulpit and the pew, is really that what the report doesn't say in its initial outlook, but you see in the more long-term trajectory, is that there's a 30-year decline. And last year was the first year that we went below 28%. I think we're at 26% now in terms of giving.
Wow.
People who are part of church, we already know that. That's nothing new to us. But I think the surprise for us was we thought that we would kind of be in this low or this even point of about 28 to 26%. And when it dipped last year, we all paid attention to it. And I would say to the church is we have to really think about what we're doing, how we are, one, in terms of churchdom, setting our members up for success.
Yes, yes.
And there's, yes, we need to understand financial stewardship. And so, yes, bring those folk in to talk to us about saving money, managing money. But also, I need ministries out here who are talking to us about how do I become wealthy? Yeah. And so over the weekend, Oprah Winfrey did this whole series on fatherhood. And I don't know if everyone saw it, but it was some great things. But I think it was D.L. Hughley said something that stuck with me. And his statement was, we have to quit telling our kids to work hard to be a success. He said that when we do that, we actually set our kids up for failure. Because when they work hard and they don't get whatever the quote, the level of success is, or financial freedom, then they get discouraged. And he talked about his dad. He said, my dad was not a lazy person. He was not a lazy man at all. He worked his whole life to make sure our family was able to be sustained and had a roof over our head. He said, but my daddy never got to see the harvest. Wow. What the statement he made that stuck to me, he said, what needs to happen is that in order to get to this point, that we should focus in on what is our gift, our talent, that thing that we'll know that we're good at, that's maybe unique from everyone else. And you put the time and the effort into that. And that's where your success comes in. It's not just you working hard. I am not a comedian. My husband is good at that. I worked hard for 25, I'll never see it. Right. But for me, I spent this time and literally, I've done all kinds of things in my life. I've worked as an administrative assistant. I've been admin assistant. I've been admissions counselor, recruiting students for school, but not until I found, quote, my place in this field of philanthropy, it's blowing like skyrockets. And people say, I'm one of those folks that I can't even explain to you the acceleration of what God is doing in my life in this field, because I finally got it. Right. And I never thought, again, somebody growing up, with hardly anything. And my mom worked hard. And so again, I Boykins saying, but I know she sowed some seed. I'm pretty sure my grandma said some prayers somewhere in there.
Amen.
But the sense of, it's not just about working hard, but it's about the intelligence and getting those things, but also finding what is your thing, what is your gift, what is your talent. And can either one of you talk about that? How did you get to your place of harvest? How did you get there?
What happened is, like everybody else, not everybody, but a lot of people, we're taught to go to college to prepare to get a job. And I happened to go to, when I went to Grambling State University, I bumped into business-minded people. And they never allowed me to develop the mentality of seeking a job, but they were talking about let's develop business. So secondly, we were able to do, when we were in college, we cut one business deal in college, over $10 million in college. We had all kinds of business things going on, running bus stations. So we were just business people. So I was able to overcome the bug of looking for a job. So now, but what I've learned since then is that the power is in not being self-centered. And the reason why we have so many people who are not successful, not becoming rich, is because they need help. And what God wants us to do, when we say that the harvest and the heart of God is one and the same, then God wants us to take that harvest and use it as he would use it. He gives the money to people expecting nothing back, right? So when we give the people, see, every culture gives people money to start business, but we don't want to help nobody. All the people with money won't help nobody because they feel like they're being used. Listen, you got to get rid of that low self-esteem about let people use you. Use me. The man say, Lord, use me. So let people use you. Look, God gonna give it back because he said he gives seed to the sower. One of the things I do, I said, people have not, a lot of people can't get there. I do not lend people money, okay? I give people money. At the money that money touched their hand, the debt's canceled. They know you don't pay me nothing back. Okay. And until the African American get to that point where we're willing to put money in people's hands and start business, we just had this thing about Black Wall Street, right? Everybody, Black Wall Street, Black Wall Street. But why are you excited that Black Wall Street don't exist no more? Do you know how Black Wall Street got started? You know how it got started? What they would do, somebody would say, you know what? I want to open up a shoe shop. And they'll say, well, how much money you need? The guy said, well, look, here's $50,000. Go open up your shoe shop. And you don't owe us nothing. So all those businesses was birthed by people giving people $250,000, giving people millions. And that power, all those business people became so powerful that it had to be destroyed. And if we take that same nature today, that same power of giving to young African American, now it's starting to catch on. We're doing it now. You're seeing Black men canceling their student loans, right? You're seeing Black men doing, Black women giving full scholarships, paying all the people who went through college. We're catching on. The church is where it all started from. The church is where all businesses were banking institutions, credit unions, and schools were birthed out of. We got to get there. We got to get back there and stop allowing us to have to go to the bank to borrow because they ain't going to lend us no money. We got to help each other. So we got to be the strength of our community.
Right. And 2 points to answer your question, how I got to my place of grace, which is where I believe you are, Shepherd. And that's the place where God empowers us to do what it is he's called us to do with ease. And I would say in the position that I am now, I now am mature enough to realize that God was showing me even from childhood. One of the things, and I think my mom's downstairs watching as well, one of the things, my nickname was Murder, She Wrote. As a little girl, right? Because I asked a whole lot of questions. I was always inquisitive. I was always trying to figure things out. Even if they told me something, I was trying to figure out if it was true or not. So carrying that forward with the title Murder, She Wrote, that's basically what I do now in the field of audit, right? I'm asking people a whole lot of questions and trying to Harry's own area as well. So that's my place of grace. That's my to give back what God has placed inside of us. And 2, I wanted to somewhat Boykins said from my perspective. I'm on a leadership email blast, and I can't think of the person's name, but one of the things he said recently in an email blast was that we operate from borrowed credibility.
Wow.
Where we borrow others' credibility and influence, and then we should allow others to borrow ours. So we shouldn't misuse, and that's exactly what I heard Boykins say. As God places us in positions of power, we've borrowed from others' influence and credibility. So why not allow others to borrow ours? And which is what he said, get away from the low self-esteem and somebody's trying to use me. We use somebody, so let somebody use you. Yeah. So, and if I misquoted you, Boykins, you can clean it up.
That was perfect. But listen, there's a gentleman named Clarence Avant, right? Lives in California. Everybody probably know him. He's called the Black Godfather. And what he did, anybody who came to him and needed help, he helped them, right? And he is the person, he is the man who made so many people successful, from President Barack Obama, President Jimmy Carter, the list goes on, P. Diddy, and the list goes on. Anybody who came to him and said, I need help, when they went to his office, they went in broke and they left out rich. Nobody went to talk to this man that went into his office and he didn't help them. And he didn't require nothing back. And the people would say, you know, I don't even know what he do for a living. But I know when you get to him and you ask him for to help you, when you left his office, whatever the thing that you wanted to go, he made sure that you achieve it. And that's the way we have to be in the African American community. We have to make sure that every person achieves their goal. Look, for example, this is my pet peeve. If we have the top minds of our African American community are going to Morehouse, Spelman, and HU, Howard University, okay? Why would we allow those kids to get there and have to leave school because they don't have the tuition? How are you going to become a senior? How are we going to sit back and say, oh, look at my brand new Mercedes. Look at my brand new this. And they got a kid getting put out of school because he don't have tuition to pay for that last year of school as a senior. And when you get put out of school because they operate under the law and you owe them money, you aren't getting that transcript. You're not going to be able to transfer. So you got to go to try to find you a job to pay the $30,000 or $40,000 that you owe them to get your transcript. Now, you know how long it takes to pay off $35,000 as an adult. Imagine a kid, his family, his mom didn't help him, his daddy didn't help him, his aunt didn't help him, his godfather didn't help him. You know, come on. We have to pick up that burden. Look, everybody think that the next person got to suffer. If you suffer, you're going to make you know. If that's the case, let's go back to slavery. Why don't we send them back to slavery and then you will be a good person because you were a good slave. Everybody we don't have to suffer. You know, people, listen, when we bless people and we're in their lives, we're able to help them. Then when negative forces come to try to persuade them to do something wrong, they're going to think, I don't want to disappoint him the way that he or she has invested in my life. So that's what it has to be. We have to be the Clarence Avants, okay, of this society. If someone comes with a business idea, we want to make, look, if your friend opened up a restaurant, go eat there. You know, go eat the man restaurant. If he opened up a mechanic shop, go and support that business. You know, I mean, it doesn't make sense. Now, the problem that we have, we want to go there and we talking about the favor of the Lord is on me. I'm parking for free or I'm eating for free. No, pay. Right. The Bible says that when Abraham and Isaac sowed into the land, they receive 100-fold. Don't miss that. When they blessed the land, and in Genesis 8:22, this is what God told Noah. He says, Noah, the land I will never, ever, because you move my heart by giving. I always ask people, what are you going to do to get God to move in your situation? How are you going to move God's heart towards you? Because you want him to bless you for 4 generations. You have to give. And when Noah gave, God says, he says, Noah, I will never, ever curse the ground. I will never, ever curse the ground. He says, look, nor will I bring a reproach against the ground. That meant that, listen to this, every time you sow a seed, you guarantee a harvest because the ground ain't cursed no more. And he says, as long as the earth remains, this is the way it's going to be. So when you bless somebody, you will never, ever be in lack. So that's how we have to think. We have to be the Clarence Avants. We all have to be. I ask this question. Why call me Uncle Darren if I ain't never did nothing for you? I ain't never help you. How can I be uncle and I ain't never help you with nothing? What you aunt for? Just say you aunt? This is another one. You call them, you take them to church, you stand before the altar. This is my godfather, this is my godmother. But then you don't never see the kid for 40 years. You're saying that when I become the godfather, godmother, if something happens to this kid, I'm going to raise him. That meant you need to be 100% of the time in that kid's life now. You need to be one saving for that kid's college. You need to be one preparing to buy that kid a car. I have all my nieces and nephews, I have an agreement with them, right? I said, as long as you're in college, first of all, we're gonna make sure you have a car. We buy them a car. We're going to fix it. You ain't got no burden while you're in college. You ain't going to have no that. I paid my nieces and nephews to read books. I said, look, every time you read a book, here's $25. After you read 4 books, I give you a bonus of $100. And it kept going up. You know, they was reading. They well read, okay? But we have to be for real in the kid's life. If we're there, ain't no drug dealer gonna be able to influence them, because they say all my needs are met by my aunt, by my uncle, by my godmother, my godfather, and the people in our community. You know, we have to be listeners. We have to be hearers. He said, be ye hearer and doers of the word. What's the word? The word is to do good. And that's what we have to do in the community. Once we get to that point, everybody giving, everybody blessing, everybody income is rising. And guess what? Now that 1% that's going down gonna go up, because everybody has the nature of giving. Our living has to be about giving, not receiving. The Bible says it's better to give than to receive. And when we catch on to that, when you hear what he said, he that has an ear, let him hear what thus says the Spirit. So that's important.
And let me say this, I like to challenge a thought that's probably not popular as it relates to college. And I agree wholeheartedly with Boykins said about helping those students that definitely go to HBCU. I can honestly say I did not attend the HBCU, but I am an advocate. I love them. But it just like any other university, I would say this, because we are talking about the mentality, right, of preparing for the harvest. Oftentimes, if a child has a desire to attend a university where they may not have the funding through scholarship or through family, I would suggest, and this is me because I'm looking long term for the harvest. We talk about the wealth of the wicked is laid up for the just. A lot of times they have all the lottery and the gambling institutions, right, that have set aside money for students to go to college, right? And they pay for it. Here in Georgia, it's Hope. I'm not sure what it's called in Louisiana, but most states have something similar. So why put that extra pressure on a student to go and have to deal with that type of stress, and then have to secure all these student loans? I did it. Didn't know any better at the time. So, and secure all these student loans when they could go to a university within the state, HBCU or otherwise, and walk out potentially debt-free without any student loans. I think changing that type of dynamic really sets that student and that generation on a path of harvest that other generations may not have had the opportunity. But that's just me.
I want to just shift a little bit because I'm watching the time too. Let's just bit about what can churches do in terms of ministry and managing the harvest. Because sometimes I'm just in church, sometimes I feel like and I don't think it's intentional, but a lot of times from the pulpit, we hear scarcity. I don't have enough for this. I don't have enough for that. I don't have enough for this. But there are principles that we are charged to live with, so bring all your tithes into the storehouse so we can have, meat. That's what we say. And then somebody comes for their rent and there's no meat. So, so how do we help churches to manage their harvest? What practical tools can we offer to pastors or ministry leaders to help them to get to that space? And so one of the things, I propose and put out there is that I feel in ministry, and Darren kind of mentioned this in terms of we have to think larger, bigger, in terms of our churches and how banking institutions and how a lot of the HBCUs came out of the church. I feel that with integration, we've lost some of that in the self-empowering part of that. We don't see a lot of churches now with literacy programs. We don't see a lot of churches who are really doing around economic empowerment and helping people to elevate themselves. And so I know one of my desires is really to help people who want to go to another level. If I have somebody who is working as, let's say, a custodian at a school, but they see themselves want to be a business owner, how do I help them to get there? And I feel like, yes, the world has their part in that. So we have the SBA, the Small Business Administration, who helps with classes and things like that. But how do we help our members to elevate and, again, shift their mindsets to where they could be if they really want to go that. Some people are fine with being where they are, but how we help to unlock the dreams of our members, to help them see this harvest is not just for the pastor. This harvest is not just for people who have multi-generations of wealth, because, most of us on this Zoom, we all know what it meant to not have at times.
Amen.
God has blessed us.
Yeah.
And so how do we help people who are at the threshold of getting into harvest, but they can't see it yet? How do we help them with that?
I think that the most important thing is that you have to learn to be content in all stages of your life. You have to have this element of peace, because I've been in a situation. I said I had this very unusual prayer, probably deeper than most people would comprehend. I said, Lord, I ask you to bless me with some trash to put in my garbage can so I can put out, because I ain't got nothing to put in there. That's when you know it's bad. You're praying for some trash. Okay? I just want to put something in the garbage can so I can put it out so the neighbors can see me putting my trash out. So all right. So I'm not just telling you. I know what it's like to have lack. All right. But it's even in that lack that I still feel powerful. I still think powerful. And I still have the courage to do things, because you got to have the courage to move, right? At our church, United Fellowship, Full Gospel Baptist Church, and the pastor, Brandon Boutin, he has what's called Information Tuesday. So on Tuesdays, he opens up, right now it's on Facebook, but it'll soon be live. Well, he brings in people to talk about different things. So we'll have different training dealing with how to set up a business. How to make that business function when things are not going right. And then you have how to grow your business, almost like a Goldman Sachs style class where you take the class over a period of over 14 or 15 months, and then you learn how to do well in that business. You learn how to do your financial planning. You learn about banking and knowing how to do proper financial planning. So that's important for the church. We have to stop being lazy, because nobody wants to work anymore. The Bible says, with the sweat of your brow that you have to earn it. I mean that we have to get involved. And that's why people don't like helping, because once you get involved as ministry, we have to get down with the people. And if we bless people with information, knowledge, proper use of information, and courage, then we're going to change not only a generation, but we're going to change the community. And like I said, if we see somebody need help, you know when somebody's doing bad, right? Don't let nobody fail. Go in and help that person. And that's what it's all about. So we have to have patience and appreciate where we are. And from that point, God will pull you to where you need to be, right? And so that's important.
And for me, for churches and ministry as a whole, just what you said, principles. The principles that we operate in individually in our individual lives, ministry should be doing the same thing. We have to be good stewards over what God has entrusted to us. So we have to practice the same level of discipline. First of all, I believe we set goals, right? The vision, you said this is about faith and philanthropy.
Yes.
So we start with faith, right?
Yes.
We start with God. I'm not taking that out of the equation. That's where it starts, it stops. So with that aside, we have to practice the principles. And Bishop Noel Jones said something. If more of us practice principle, we rely less on miracles. And I think so many of us have become accustomed to believing God for miracles when God is saying, you keep asking me for something I've already given you the tools to do. And that goes the same for ministry, right? A lot of times we're believing God for things. Again, yes, I know sometimes everybody doesn't give. Only a certain percentage of people give every week. But if we do, and I'm sorry, I'm gonna go here, trend analysis and some performance measures and see what our trends are, then we can work with where we are and then believe God for the greater. Right? Yeah. So that's principle based. And then I made a note when you said, what else can churches do? One of the things I also believe every gift that a ministry needs is in the house. So sometimes you have to, and Shepherd, no, we've talked about this before. Sometimes you have to tap out, look outside the norm and ask. So you may not have a person in your ministry that wants to work on a Sunday morning or work for Bible study, but maybe they can assist you administratively. Maybe they can assist you operationally. So you have to, and you don't have to always pay for that. Because remember, if we're operating out of our harvest is the grace that God has given us to operate where we are. Shepherd, you operate in philanthropy. Why you should be, right, assisting in philanthropic areas in ministry. So we have to tap into those areas and the other things individually. But I also wanted to say this. If you're in a smaller ministry and you feel like you don't have all the tools, remember, the tools are still in the house. That means the person may not have the skills, but they have the connections. So I would say to you, if you don't have the person, then ask the people who they are connected to, because remember, it could happen through partnership and collaboration. Remember, everything we need is in the house. Either it's there or it's there through connection, and we can partner with organizations, collaborate with different organizations. What about other churches, other nonprofit, other businesses? Let's get together and do something community-wide. It doesn't always have to be individual churches all trying to do the same thing.
Yes, that's important. I also want to add this. My former pastor, Bishop Tommy Triplett, he said something that's very, very relevant. He said the blessing is in the tension of life. And when things are going at its worst point, when it's very stressful, when things are like it's going downhill and there's so much tension, that's where your blessing is. You have to now take your spiritual eye for that blessing, because what the devil is trying to do is trying to distract you. Because at that moment, that blessing you're looking for, it's right there. And if he can get you to move, remember, we started off talking about seed time and harvest. Everything happens in the season. And if you miss that season, you miss that wave. If you try to plan it out of season, you're going to miss it. So don't allow difficult moments to stop you from looking for your blessing. That's very, very important.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. I saw one comment on Facebook. Someone really, they want to push the envelope a little bit just in terms of church sizes. And I'm talking about, this advent of what's happening with mega ministries. And so in some ways, it's almost like, even for us, again, taking this from practical and personal to the ministry side of things, when we talk about living beyond our means. So in our world, on the personal side of things, we get ourselves into these houses. Pastor Thomas, we talked about this in another session, but we talked about when we decided to get our houses, we did not buy at the top of the threshold of what our real estate agents and the finance people told us we qualify for. Because again, we all understand there's life. And so not that you shouldn't invest in real estate and those other properties, but don't tap yourself out to the maximum level.
Yes.
Life does happen sometimes.
It does.
And if you don't set yourself up for life instances, those things the practical things, again, rainy day funds. So in ministry, where are the rainy day funds?
Exactly.
If we doing that personally and across the pulpit, there's no rainy day fund, then we're like, when we talked about tithe offering and we're talking about tithing, and so we give our 10%,
right?
Then again, we're asking the ministries, you want us to practice this principle,
right? Where's
your 10% going? Or is it all being consumed because we're living beyond our means, not only in our personal life, but at the ministry level? Right. And where are those heart-to-heart conversations where ministries and pastors have to get past pride to say, at this moment, family, because at this point we're in church families, we are living beyond our means and we may have to downsize. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. And so sometimes, and I remember our pastor even saying this, sometimes the weight of the expenses of these larger buildings take away from true ministry.
It does.
We're just trying to keep the lights on.
Right.
And so abundance, there's no harvest for us to bring in the harvest.
Yes.
Right.
There's just nothing there. And so any other things you may want to add in that?
I would jump in and say this. Our ministry as a whole, well, for individuals, families, and for ministries as a whole, is that we take this pandemic time and allow it to allow us an opportunity to reassess where we are, to reassess what's really important, to reassess what God has really called us to do, to reassess where our place of harvest really is, to reassess what it is we're called to do, our places of grace, so that we can start to operate from those places of harvest. So that may be downsizing. That may be cutting some things. That may be increasing in some other areas. That may be implementing some new programs and implementing some new partnerships and collaboration. What I used to pay for 100%, I'm going to collaborate with another organization and where it only cost me 30%.
That's good.
Right? So let's, I really pray that we take that time as we're coming out of it and allow God to give us the wisdom. Remember, I'm going back to my 4 words. Give us the courage, give us the strategy, give us the guidance to reassess where we were and really look at where he's called us to go so that we can really fully operate in that harvest.
That's very, very important. What we have to also be very, very mindful of is that we have to have discipline. And what I learned to do, I stopped shopping sales and I started shopping replacement. I only go to the store when I need to replace something because sales are determined by the store. And I said, you can always go in the store and find a sale. But when you need to replace something and you go to the store, you're going to find yourself storing your money now. See, you have to store where you want to go because the more that life, to be successful, you have to have a cash flow, you have to have lump sums of money coming in, and you have to store. And if you have all 3 mechanisms working and they're working correctly, then opportunities are going to come about because there are going to be so many people who are going to be not disciplined, who are going to lose their houses and lose their lands. That's why God says you're going to live in houses you didn't build. So because you have the discipline, you have the money, and you start buying houses, and then you'll be having another income coming in from renting, right? See, having a heart for God doesn't require you to be stupid. See, you have to be wise. So you're not going to let people use you. So you're going to have the same principles. We're talking about business harvest, personal harvest, and ministry harvest. Each one is important in its own right. And they're going to be separate, right? So, but the key thing is you have to make sure that you have an appropriate amount of growth going on in your bank accounts, right? So that when the opportunity comes along, you can be able to invest in it because you can't invest in something if you're broke. Nobody's going to give you money to get rich, right? Oh, here's $1 million, go become rich. No, with $1 million, you're already rich. So, so that's important.
And I would add is one of the things we like to emphasize is in personal finance is to, of course, tithe 10%. And you guys have probably heard me say this, save 20% and then live off 70%. I believe if no matter the size of the church, if they could at least start there, right? Start by setting aside 10% or whatever they decide for whatever programs, making sure at a minimum that's done. And then set aside 10 or 20% of whatever they feel is a fund for the savings in case something happens. And then you have the remaining amounts to make sure you're covering your operating expenses. So that's just a baseline to start. That is in no way Bible of where it says you got to do it that way. That's just an idea because that works in any size ministry, just like it works in any size family or individual finances.
If the pandemic taught us anything, it says that when things are at its worst, you're not going to get help. That meant that you have to be prepared to protect your family. See, that your harvest is meant to protect 4 generations. That meant you have to be very strategic in how you spend and how you use your money. That's why God says, purpose in your heart, what you gonna give. That's very, very important. You need to pray about it. You know, every dollar that goes out, literally, you need to have a meeting with God about that dollar. You just don't give it away.
A meeting with God and a meeting with yourself or your family.
Yes.
Yeah. Amen.
And that's one other thing I just want to talk about. So harvest comes. And I think I just want to tap on this for a second. So there's some people who haven't quite arrived yet. They're on training wheels when it comes to the steps of understanding seed time, harvest time. They're on here because I'm hearing them saying, I hear all y'all saying that Boykins have the money to buy people cars and LaTona, say 20%, and I'm just trying to keep these lights on. So how do we help people to get to that point? How do they begin to baby steps for people who are just starting in this bicycle phase? They ain't motorcycles, they ain't got no phantom cars, none of that stuff. Then, in the bicycle phase of this relationship and understanding seed and harvest. So how do we help people who are just getting started, but they have a heart to want to be able to do this?
I would say, again, I keep going back to when you say faith and philanthropy, it all starts with God. Pray to him and ask him because you're going to need his assistance, right? You're going to need the assistance of the Holy Spirit to help you with that discipline that Boykins talked about. So, and then look at where you are. Take an honest look at what you have coming in and what you have going out. Be honest. How much are you spending on everything? Every single dollar? Just be honest. And then once you lay that out and look at it and say, God, what can I cut? And when you've cut all the fat away, then you go to God and say, God, now I need more. I need more income. And then you be open. And when you said, I think you mentioned it when we were talking earlier this week, when the harvest comes, will you know it? It may not come the way you think it's going to come. I spoke with someone today who works, but they have been blessed. Their hands have been blessed with crafting. And I tell you what they showed me today, I wanted to buy all of it, but it was just the prototypes. But when I tell you they've already have a website and business, I said to them, eventually this is going to supersede what you're making here, right? So the harvest may not look like what you expect it to look like when it comes.
Yes. That's important. So even if you start with what you seem to be nothing, every person has over their lifetime $1 million or more touch their hands, right? And you have to look at yourself, your life as a pool. But in your pool, there's a lot of little holes in it. You got to figure out where those holes are and plug them up. It may be that you're going out to eat too much, because going out to eat with 4 people can be very expensive. It's a couple of $100 every time you go out. You have to plug up those holes. And if you plug those holes up and become intentional about where your money go, you will eventually have money to do things, right? And then you might have to pray to God for an additional source of income, because there's various ideas that people can help you out with that will guide more revenue, more streams of income coming in. And as those streams are coming in, you store them up, then an opportunity will come along. God will put you at the intersection where your blessing will come right by you. He will make it happen. He always does. And that's the God he is. That's why harvest and God heart is the same. So God's going to always speak to you. He ain't going to let you hang out there. Trust me. Remember, I started off with a prayer like, God, give me some trash to go around collecting trash in the communities and put my trash out today. So I've been there. So I ain't started at the top.
That's awesome. And I think the only thing that I'm kind of hearing or feeling at this moment is really around this place of harvest in ministry. It is something that Elder Thomas said that I think we should tap into in understanding, even though we're in a pandemic and most of us aren't in our churches totally, some of us are. And I'll just throw this out there saying, Elder Thomas said that everything we need is in the house. I think this not only goes for churches and pastors to really reassess that, and I'll just throw this out there, this is my little nugget for the night, is that if you're doing new members intake and you're not asking people what their skill set is, you're missing it.
Yes.
You don't even know what's in your house. You just know, every now and then somebody giving a little, dropping a couple coins in. But you don't know what's in your house. You have never done an assessment of what your house looks like. So that's my little nugget for the night for y'all. Pastors and ministry leaders, do that. And that starts with new members. I know next month we're gonna delve into some things that's gonna be really, really good. And I would say to you on tonight that this has been a great conversation. And I'll give Elder Thomas and Elder Boykins one last purview to say if there's anything burning in their hearts to say to you. And then I'll give my last plug and we'll be done for the night.
Well, I thank you for giving me an opportunity to be here to be able to talk about the seed time harvest. And the most important thing that people can remember is that we have to be willing to get dirty. We have to be willing to help people. And if we're helping people, we can't expect nothing back because our return comes from God. So that's most important. And I yield.
And thank you as well. I've really enjoyed the conversation. Good to see Boykins. Hadn't seen him in a while. But I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. And I'd like to say just where you started with Joshua and Caleb, the harvest is there. And God has promised it to us. And it's here. And if God is who he is and he doesn't lie, right? He promised it to us. The harvest is right there at your fingertips. And I know we like to say, reach up and grab it, but reach up and grab it means go fight for it.
Yeah.
Grab it means go and be disciplined. And everyone knows my words. The knowledge that you gained today, the knowledge that you gained in church or in the books that you read, use that coupled with integrity, discipline, and then pray for my 4 words: wisdom, courage, guidance, and strategy. And I promise you'll see that harvest quicker than you think.
Amen.
That's awesome. So thank you both for joining us on tonight. I'm just done my final plug for Full Gospel. Baptist Church Fellowship. We have this week started on tomorrow. So you have less than 24 hours to register for free. So I'm actually teaching at Full Gospel on faith and philanthropy and offering a whole nother set of new tidbits that'll really help ministries and pastors. If you haven't registered, this is an open registration to anyone. You would register at www.fullgospelconference.org. And we'll make sure we put that in the comment section for you. Again, thank you, Elder Boykins. Thank you, Elder Thomas, for lending your time and your expertise, your gifts, your life experiences to this. And I hope to be able to bring you guys back on for another session and we'll kind of delve further into some other things. So have a good night, everyone.
All right, thank you.
Bye.